Somewhere in the Mushroom Kingdom, beneath a twilight sky painted in shades of amber and rose, a massive castle stands silhouetted against the fading light. Flags bearing a familiar insignia flutter in the evening breeze. Inside, in the throne room where shadows dance along stone walls adorned with his own likeness, sits a king who has known defeat more intimately than perhaps any monarch in history. His name is Bowser. And tonight, like countless nights before, he dreams of victory. There is something profoundly human about Bowser's story, even though he is neither human nor, technically speaking, even real in the way we understand reality. He is a video game character, a collection of pixels and code, yet he has become one of the most recognizable figures in all of gaming. Not because of his victories, but because of his defeats. Because he never stops trying, even when trying seems utterly futile. How many times has Bowser been defeated? The question itself seems almost cruel to ask, like inquiring how many times the tide has been turned back by the shore. Since his first appearance in 1985, across dozens of games spanning nearly 40 years, Bowser has faced defeat after defeat after defeat. He has fallen into lava. He has been hurled into bombs. He has watched his castles crumble, his plans unravel, his armies scattered. And yet, every single time, he returns. This is not a story about winning. It is a story about the refusal to surrender, about the stubborn, almost admirable persistence of a villain who simply will not accept that he has lost. In a medium filled with complex anti-heroes and morally gray characters, Bowser stands out not for his sophistication, but for his simplicity. He wants to kidnap the princess. He wants to rule the kingdom. He wants to defeat the plumber who always stands in his way. And no matter how many times these desires are thwarted, he picks himself up, dusts off his spiked shell, and tries again. There is a rhythm to Bowser's existence, a pattern as reliable as the changing of seasons. Princess Peach will be kidnapped, or her kingdom threatened, or some grand scheme set in motion. Mario will embark on a journey through colorful worlds filled with obstacles and enemies. Eventually, after trials and tribulations, the hero will reach the final castle. There will be a confrontation, usually involving platforms suspended over lava, or rotating arenas, or some elaborate mechanism that Bowser has spent considerable time and resources constructing. The battle will rage, and in the end, inevitably, Mario will find some way to turn Bowser's own power against him. The King of Koopas will fall, roaring in frustration, and Peach will be saved. Then, after some time has passed, the cycle begins anew. What drives someone to continue in the face of such consistent failure? What psychological mechanisms allow Bowser to wake up after each defeat, shake off the burns and bruises, and immediately begin plotting his next attempt? These are questions that lead us into fascinating territory, into the strange space where fictional characters reveal truths about persistence, ego, obsession, and the human refusal to accept defeat. Bowser is not a tragic figure in the classical sense. He is not brought low by a fatal flaw or destroyed by forces beyond his control. His defeats are not inevitable consequences of hubris, though hubris certainly plays a role. Rather, Bowser is something rarer and perhaps more interesting. He is a comic villain elevated to the status of legend through sheer persistence. He has lost so many times that losing has become part of his identity, woven into the fabric of who he is. And yet, he persists. In the quiet moments between one scheme and the next, one imagines Bowser in his castle, staring out at the Mushroom Kingdom he so desperately wants to rule. Does he ever question his methods? Does he ever wonder if perhaps there might be another way? A path that doesn't end with him plummeting into molten rock while Mario and Peach escape to safety? Perhaps. But if such doubts exist, they never seem to deter him for long. Because Bowser is, above all else, dedicated to his craft. He is a professional villain, and his profession is one that demands an almost supernatural tolerance for failure. The Mushroom Kingdom itself seems designed to facilitate this endless cycle. Castles can be rebuilt, armies can be reconstituted. Koopa Troopas and Goombas are apparently available in infinite supply, always ready to march forth once more under Bowser's banner. Even death itself seems to be a temporary inconvenience, with Bowser returning from apparent demises that would finish any ordinary villain. He has survived being dropped into bottomless pits. He has walked away from explosions that leveled entire fortresses. He has been transformed into bones, only to regenerate his flesh and resume his campaigns. This resilience is part of what makes Bowser so compelling. He is not indestructible in the moment of battle, but he is, in a larger sense, impossible to truly defeat. Every ending is just a new beginning. Every crushing loss is merely the prologue to the next attempt. And while this might seem like a kind of madness, there is also something strangely admirable about it. Bowser may be a villain, but he is a villain who absolutely refuses to give up. His defeats have become the stuff of legend. Gaming history is filled with iconic boss battles, but few antagonists have been defeated in as many creative and memorable ways as Bowser. From the simple act of running past him to hit an axe in the original Super Mario Bros., to the elaborate space battles of the Galaxy games, to the wedding-themed finale of Super Mario Odyssey, each defeat adds another chapter to his story. And each time, the method of his downfall seems almost designed to be humiliating. It's not enough that he loses. He must lose in ways that underscore how his own schemes and confidence work against him. Yet Bowser never seems to learn from these defeats. Or perhaps more accurately, he learns the wrong lessons. Each time he returns, his plans are bigger, his castles more elaborate, his strategies more complex. He doesn't adapt by becoming more cautious or rethinking his fundamental approach. Instead, he doubles down, escalating the scale of his ambitions as if sheer magnitude might somehow overcome the pattern of failure that defines his existence. This is the paradox at the heart of Bowser's character. He is simultaneously persistent and unchanging, always trying, yet never truly evolving. He is trapped in an eternal recurrence, doomed to repeat the same basic pattern with minor variations. And yet, within that repetition, there is something almost Zen-like. Bowser has achieved a kind of acceptance of his role. He is the villain. Mario is the hero. Peach is the princess in need of rescue. These roles are fixed, and Bowser seems content, or at least resigned, to play his part forever. As we settle in to explore the full scope of Bowser's endless defeats, we'll journey through his origins, his motivations, his relationships, and the many, many ways he has been thwarted over the decades. We'll examine what his persistence says about character, determination, and the strange nobility that can exist even in villainy. We'll see him not just as an obstacle for Mario to overcome, but as a fully realized character whose failures have made him, paradoxically, one of gaming's greatest success stories. Because while Bowser may never achieve his goals, he has achieved something perhaps more important. He has become immortal. Not in the sense of being impossible to kill, but in the sense of being impossible to forget. Children who weren't born when he first appeared in Super Mario Bros. Know his name, recognize his spiked shell, fear his fire breath. He has transcended his role as a mere antagonist to become an icon, a symbol, a permanent fixture in the landscape of gaming culture. And all of that is built on a foundation of failure, built on being the villain who loses, again and again and again, yet somehow remains beloved. That is Bowser's true achievement, not conquest, not victory, but the creation of a legacy through persistence in the face of endless defeat. So let us begin at the beginning, with the creation of a king who would become gaming's most famous loser. Let us trace the path from his first appearance to his most recent defeat, and all the defeats in between. Let us try to understand what makes Bowser, Bowser, and perhaps in understanding him, we might find something that resonates with our own struggles against seemingly insurmountable odds. The night deepens, the castle waits, and Bowser, as always, is planning. In the beginning, there was an ox, or rather, there was the idea of an ox. Somewhere in the creative depths of Nintendo, as the team worked on what would become Super Mario Bros., Shigeru Miyamoto envisioned the game's primary antagonist as an ox-like creature. He had been inspired by an anime film adaptation of the Chinese novel Journey to the West, specifically by the character of King Gruesome, the Ox Demon King. This character, with its imposing presence and antagonistic role, seemed like the perfect template for the villain who would threaten the Mushroom Kingdom. But creative visions have a way of evolving. When Takashi Tezuka looked at early designs, he made an observation that would change gaming history. The character, he noted, looked much more like a turtle than an ox. Given that the game already featured turtle-like Koopa Troopas as common enemies, it made sense for their king to be, well, a king among turtles, a leader of the Koopa race. From this conversation, from this collision of different visions, Bowser began to take his final form. The name itself has an interesting history. In Japan, he was and remains Koopa, specifically bearing the title of Great Demon King. But for Western audiences, he needed a different name, and so he became Bowser. The origin of this name remains somewhat mysterious. Some theories suggest it was chosen because it was a popular pet name at the time. Others point to the alliteration with words beginning with B, tying it to other considered names like Bibinba. Still others note that Bowser derives from a Norman greeting meaning "good sir," which would be deeply ironic for such a villainous character. The earliest design we have for Bowser shows him in the game's original box art, looking quite different from what we now recognize. His skin is gray-blue instead of green and yellow. He lacks horns. The details are rougher, less defined. This was Miyamoto's own handiwork, as time constraints prevented him from commissioning a manga artist or illustrator to create the game's art. But soon, Yoichi Kotabe would join the team, and his artistic vision would refine Bowser into the design we know today. Kotabe drew inspiration from the Chinese soft-shell turtle, which he knew to be particularly aggressive. This aggression, this fierce temperament, perfectly matched what Bowser needed to be. Not just large and powerful, but actively hostile, quick to anger, ready to fight. The spiked shell, the horns, the shock of red hair, the razor-sharp teeth, all of these elements came together to create a character who looked every bit the fearsome villain he was meant to be. When Super Mario Bros. Launched in 1985, players encountered Bowser in a form that would establish the template for decades to come. He stood at the end of each castle, breathing fire, guarding bridges suspended over lava. The method of defeating him was brilliantly simple. You either had to reach an axe behind him and cut the bridge, sending him tumbling into the fiery depths below, or you could brave his flames and hit him with enough fireballs to take him down directly. Most castles featured imposters, fake Bowsers, who would transform into lesser enemies when defeated. But in the final castle, the real Bowser waited, and only by overcoming him could Peach be rescued. This first defeat set the tone for everything that would follow. Bowser was powerful, yes. Threatening, certainly. But he was also vulnerable to his own schemes. The very bridge he stood upon to bar Mario's progress could be turned against him. His own castle's mechanisms could facilitate his downfall. This would become a recurring theme. Bowser's defeats almost always involve his own power or infrastructure being used against him in some way. But before the villain, before the king, before the kidnapper of princesses, there was baby Bowser. The Yoshi's Island games would eventually show us Bowser in his earliest days, and these glimpses into his childhood reveal something fascinating about the character. Even as an infant, Bowser displayed the traits that would define him. He was selfish, grabbing for things he wanted. He was quick to anger when thwarted. He showed little empathy for others. In Yoshi's Island, baby Bowser is watched over by Kamek, a magic Koopa who would serve as his guardian and later as his most trusted advisor. Kamek's devotion to Bowser begins here in these early days, and the relationship between them is one of the most consistent elements across the entire Mario series. Kamek is not merely a servant. He is something closer to a parent figure, raising this troublesome child who was destined for villainy. The games show baby Bowser encountering baby Mario, establishing their rivalry from the very beginning. Even then, there was something about that red-clad plumber that irritated Bowser. Perhaps it was confidence. Perhaps it was the way baby Mario seemed to succeed where baby Bowser would fail. Or perhaps it was simply destiny, two souls bound together in eternal opposition from their earliest moments. As a star child, one of 7 beings destined for greatness, baby Bowser had potential. But while other star children like Mario, Luigi, and Peach would grow to become heroes and leaders in their own right, baby Bowser chose a different path. He embraced villainy with enthusiasm. Where others saw cooperation and harmony as ideals, Bowser saw weakness. Power, domination, conquest, these became his goals. And they remained his goals, unwavering, throughout his entire life. The transition from baby to full-grown Koopa King is never explicitly shown, but we can infer certain things. Under Kamek's guidance, Bowser grew in both size and ambition. He assembled an army consisting primarily of Koopas like himself, but also including Goombas, Hammer Brothers, Bullet Bills, and countless other species. He built castles, fortresses, airships. He established himself as a force to be reckoned with in the Mushroom Kingdom and beyond. By the time of Super Mario Bros., Bowser had become king in more than just name. He commanded respect and fear from his minions, who followed him with surprising loyalty despite his temper and his tendency to blame them for his failures. He had the resources to repeatedly threaten the entire kingdom, and he had developed his signature obsession, the kidnapping of Princess Peach. Early manuals and materials explain this kidnapping in practical terms. Peach possessed magic that could undo Bowser's transformative spell over the Mushroom Kingdom's inhabitants. By capturing her, he neutralized this threat and could proceed with his conquest unimpeded. But as the series evolved, so too did the explanation for Bowser's fixation on the princess. It became less about strategic necessity and more about personal desire. Bowser's physical design continued to evolve through the years. His appearance in Super Mario Bros. Was limited by the NES's graphical capabilities. He lacked hair in his sprite form. His colors were constrained by the palette available. But with each new console generation, each new game, Bowser gained more detail, more personality in his very appearance. His hair became more prominent, styled in a wild mane. His facial expressions grew more varied, capable of conveying rage, glee, frustration, and even moments of sadness or contemplation. The voice came later. In Super Mario 64, Bowser received his first real voice acting, though it consisted primarily of roars and his signature evil laugh. The gwahaha or bwahaha that would become so associated with him first appeared here, a booming, confident laugh that perfectly captured his personality. He was not merely evil. He was delighted by his own evil. He reveled in it. Later games would give him more articulated speech, particularly in the RPG titles, where dialogue was necessary to advance the plot. Here, Bowser's personality could shine through more fully. We learned that he was bombastic, quick to take offense, prone to dramatic declarations. In the Japanese versions, he refers to himself using wagahai, an archaic first-person pronoun associated with nobility and self-aggrandizement. Everything about how Bowser speaks reinforces that he sees himself as royalty, as someone of immense importance. Yet for all his bluster and confidence, Bowser was designed to lose. This is a fundamental truth that shapes everything about the character. From the very beginning, the pattern was established. Bowser kidnaps Peach. Mario journeys through multiple worlds. Mario confronts Bowser. Mario wins. This formula, repeated across countless games with variations in the details, defines the relationship between hero and villain. One might think that such repetition would make Bowser boring or predictable, but the opposite proved true. Each iteration allowed Nintendo to explore different facets of his character. In spin-off games like Mario Kart and Mario Party, he became more comedic, his villainy taking on a lighter tone. In the RPG titles, he gained depth, showing hints of honor, loyalty, even occasional heroism when faced with villains more threatening than himself. The creation of Bowser was not a single moment, but an evolution. From ox to turtle. From simple antagonist to complex character. From sprite to fully realized three-dimensional model. Each stage built upon what came before, refining the concept, adding layers. And through it all, one thing remained constant. Bowser was the villain who would never win, yet who would never stop trying. Looking at Bowser's early appearances now, with decades of hindsight, what strikes you most is not how simple he was, but how much potential was already present. The pieces were all there from the beginning. The aggressive personality, the fire breath, the castle at the end of each world, the princess as motivation, the inevitable defeat. All Nintendo had to do was keep elaborating on these elements, finding new ways to express them, new contexts to explore them. And elaborate they did. With each new Mario game, Bowser's role was reconsidered and reimagined. His castles grew more elaborate, his schemes more ambitious, his defeats more spectacular. The King of Koopas, who first appeared on the NES, would seem almost quaint compared to the Bowser who would later steal Power Stars to create a galaxy, or merge with a castle to become a mobile fortress, or grow to kaiju-sized proportions and rampage across kingdoms. But that first Bowser, that simple arrangement of pixels standing on a bridge over lava, contains the DNA of everything that would follow. In that moment, when players first encountered him and first sent him tumbling into the flames below, a legend was born. Not of a villain who conquered all, but of a villain who would try to conquer all again and again for decades to come. Kamek probably knew, even then, that the baby he raised would grow up to be many things. Powerful, determined, ambitious, fearsome, but successful. That was never in the cards. And yet, perhaps that was never really the point. Perhaps the point was the trying. The endless, futile, admirable act of getting back up after each defeat and declaring that next time would be different. Spoiler alert, next time was never different. Next time was always the same. But Bowser tried anyway. If you were to map out Bowser's defeats chronologically, from his first appearance to his most recent, you would create a document of remarkable length, a ledger of failure that spans decades and dozens of games. Yet within this seeming chaos, patterns emerge. Bowser's approach to villainy follows certain principles, certain strategies that he returns to again and again despite their consistent failure. Understanding these patterns helps us understand the character, and perhaps understand something about the nature of obsession itself. The first pattern is spatial. Bowser loves castles. This might seem obvious, as he is a king, and kings traditionally reside in castles. But Bowser's obsession with castle-based lairs goes beyond mere preference. Nearly every major confrontation with him takes place in some kind of fortress or stronghold. These castles serve as the culminating challenge, the final test before the player can claim victory. They are filled with traps, puzzles, obstacles, and minions, all designed to stop Mario's progress. What's fascinating is how these castles inevitably become complicit in Bowser's defeat. In the original Super Mario Bros., the axes that drop him into lava are built into the castle's own architecture. In Super Mario 64, the bombs surrounding the battle arenas are just lying there, waiting to be used against him. His castles are simultaneously his greatest assets and his greatest liabilities. They project power and inspire fear, yes, but they also provide the very mechanisms of his downfall. One must wonder about Bowser's architects and engineers. Do they ever question the design decisions that consistently lead to their king's defeat? Who decided that putting an easily accessible axe right behind where Bowser stands was a good idea? Who thought it wise to surround battle arenas with explosives that can be triggered by simply throwing Bowser into them? These seem like obvious security flaws, yet they persist across game after game, castle after castle. Perhaps Bowser insists on these features. Perhaps his ego demands dramatic confrontations in elaborate settings, even if that drama works against him. Or perhaps, on some level, Bowser knows that these weaknesses need to exist. That without them, the battle would lack excitement, would lack the give and take that makes the confrontation meaningful. A villain who is truly unbeatable is boring. Bowser, for all his bluster, seems to understand that being beatable is part of being memorable. The second pattern is escalation. Bowser never scales back his ambitions after a defeat. He always goes bigger, grander, more elaborate. Lost attempting to conquer the Mushroom Kingdom? Next time, try to conquer all the kingdoms. Failed at that? How about creating an empire at the center of the universe? Didn't work? Fine. Merge with a castle and become a mobile fortress. Each scheme outdoes the last in terms of sheer scope and audacity. This escalation extends to his physical form as well. Many confrontations with Bowser involve him growing to enormous size through magic or consuming power-ups. The Kamek-powered giant Bowser in New Super Mario Bros. Wii. The colossal spacefaring Bowser in Super Mario Galaxy 2. Fury Bowser, towering over islands in Bowser's Fury. The message is clear. If normal-sized Bowser can't win, perhaps Giant Bowser can. Spoiler: Giant Bowser also cannot win, but the trying is spectacular. There's something almost childlike about this logic. The same impulse that makes a child think that adding more of something will automatically make it better. More height means more power. More size means more threat. Bowser apparently never considers that increasing his size might actually make him a bigger target, more vulnerable rather than less. Or if he does consider it, he dismisses the concern in favor of the intimidation factor. The third pattern is fire. Bowser breathes fire. This is perhaps his most iconic ability, the power that most defines him as a threat. He can produce continuous streams of flame or individual fireballs. He can create fire that homes in on targets or rain down from above. In some games, he can even breathe blue fire, an upgrade that somehow makes it more menacing. Fire is Bowser's primary weapon, his go-to attack in nearly every encounter. Yet fire has failed him every single time. It has never been enough to stop Mario, never been sufficient to secure victory. One might think that after decades of this, Bowser would consider diversifying his attack strategy, perhaps learning ice magic or developing some kind of non-elemental assault. But no. Bowser sticks with fire. It's his signature, part of his identity, and he refuses to abandon it, even though it has proven inadequate countless times. There's a stubbornness to this, an unwillingness to adapt that characterizes much of Bowser's approach. He has found tactics he likes, strategies he's comfortable with, and he will not deviate from them regardless of results. This is both his greatest weakness and, paradoxically, one of his most endearing qualities. Bowser is who he is. He will not compromise his identity just to win. Victory on terms other than his own is not victory at all. The fourth pattern is the timing of his defeats. Bowser almost always falls at the end of epic confrontations after Mario has overcome numerous obstacles and challenges. The defeats are earned. They are hard-fought. Even when the method of defeat seems simple in retrospect, dropping him into lava or hitting him with 3 throws into bombs, the path to reaching that point was arduous. Bowser may lose consistently, but he doesn't lose easily. This is important to understanding his character. Bowser is not a pushover. He is genuinely powerful, genuinely threatening. His defeats come not because he is weak, but because Mario is just slightly stronger, just slightly more clever, just slightly more determined. The margin between Bowser's failure and potential success is often razor thin. A few more seconds, and Mario might not have reached that axe in time. One more accurate fireball, and Mario might have fallen into the lava instead. In this sense, Bowser's defeats are not humiliating. They are respectable. He goes down fighting, using every trick and tactic at his disposal, pushing Mario to his limits. The fact that he consistently comes so close makes his persistence more understandable. He's not delusional about his chances. He knows from experience that he can take Mario to the wire. Next time, he thinks, I'll push just a little harder. I'll build my castle just a little better. And next time, I'll win. The fifth pattern is recovery. No matter how spectacular the defeat, no matter how final it seems in the moment, Bowser always comes back. He has survived falling into lava so many times that it's lost all meaning. He has been crushed, exploded, disintegrated, transformed into bones, and thrown into the vacuum of space. None of it sticks. Some time passes, days or weeks or months depending on the game's timeline, and Bowser returns, fully healed, ready to try again. This recovery is rarely explained in detail. We don't usually see how Bowser escapes from whatever fate befell him, or how he regenerates from injuries that would kill any normal creature. He simply reappears, as inevitable as the seasons changing. This gives him an almost mythological quality. He is less a mortal being and more a force of nature, an element of the Mushroom Kingdom that can no more be permanently removed than one could remove the sun from the sky. The sixth pattern is adaptation within repetition. While Bowser's basic strategies remain the same, he does show some capacity for learning and innovation. Each castle he builds incorporates new traps and challenges. Each confrontation introduces new attack patterns. He studies Mario's abilities and tries to counter them. If Mario can jump, Bowser puts in obstacles that are difficult to jump over. If Mario has power-ups, Bowser designs encounters that nullify their advantages. This adaptation is never enough to secure victory, but it's present nonetheless. Bowser is not completely static. He evolves, just very slowly and without ever questioning his fundamental assumptions. It's like watching someone try to solve a puzzle but refusing to consider that they might be using the wrong pieces. The effort is there. The intelligence is there. but the willingness to truly change is not. The seventh pattern, and perhaps the most important, is the emotional arc of each defeat. Early in a confrontation, Bowser is confident, even gleeful. He taunts Mario, declares his inevitable victory, revels in his own power. As the battle progresses and Mario gains the upper hand, this confidence begins to crack. Bowser becomes more aggressive, more desperate. His attacks grow more frantic. And when the final blow comes, when he realizes he has lost again, there's always a moment of disbelief before the fall. In that moment, you can almost see the thought crossing his mind. How? How did this happen again? I had him. I was winning. And then the realization hits. He wasn't winning. He was never going to win. And as he tumbles into whatever fate awaits him this time, as his castle crumbles or explodes around him, that's when the roar comes. Not a roar of pain, but of frustration. A wordless expression of rage at the universe for denying him once more. Then time passes. Bowser recovers. He reflects on what went wrong, though his reflection never leads to truly useful insights. And slowly, gradually, the confidence returns. The belief that next time will be different. The conviction that his defeat was a fluke, an aberration, and not the inevitable outcome it has always been. And so he plans, he builds, he schemes. The pattern continues, as reliable as clockwork, as predictable as the tides. In some ways, this predictability is Bowser's greatest weakness. Mario knows what to expect. Players know what to expect. Everyone knows that the final castle will have lava and platforms and some mechanism that can be turned against Bowser. Everyone knows that fire breath and ground pounds will be his primary attacks. Everyone knows how this story ends. But in other ways, this predictability is comforting. There is something reassuring about Bowser's consistency. The world may change, technology may evolve, but Bowser remains Bowser. He kidnaps princesses and builds castles and breathes fire and falls into lava. It's as natural as breathing, as inevitable as gravity. The pattern has been established, the template set, and for nearly 40 years, Bowser has been following it with only minor variations. Does he realize he's trapped in this cycle? Does he see the pattern from the outside as we do? Or is he so fully invested in his role that the cycle feels like progress, each iteration a new opportunity rather than a repeat of old failures? We cannot know for certain, but we can watch the pattern unfold again and again and marvel at the persistence it requires. At the dedication to villainy that keeps Bowser trying even when trying seems pointless. The pattern may be predictable, but the commitment to following it is anything but ordinary. Why does Bowser do what he does? This question, simple on its surface, reveals layers of complexity when examined closely. Over the decades of Mario games, Bowser's motivations have shifted, evolved, and deepened, transforming him from a one-dimensional villain into something more nuanced. To understand Bowser's endless cycle of defeat, we must first understand what drives him to engage in that cycle at all. In the beginning, Bowser's motivation was straightforward conquest. According to the original Super Mario Bros. Instruction manual, Bowser had transformed the inhabitants of the Mushroom Kingdom into blocks and other objects using dark magic. Princess Peach, possessing the power to undo this spell, was the only one who could restore the kingdom. By kidnapping her and imprisoning her in his castle, Bowser prevented this restoration and secured his domination. It was a practical, strategic motivation. Remove the obstacle, conquer the kingdom. This framing positioned Bowser as a traditional fantasy villain, an evil sorcerer king seeking power and territory. There was no personal element to it, no particular fixation on Peach beyond her political and magical significance. She was a means to an end, a chess piece to be captured, and Mario was simply the hero who stood in the way of this conquest. But as the series continued, something changed. The practical motivation began to fade, replaced by something more personal. Bowser's kidnappings of Peach became less about what she could do and more about who she was. The goal shifted from using her to prevent the kingdom's restoration to simply possessing her. The conquest of the kingdom remained important, certainly, but it began to feel secondary to the princess herself. This evolution crystallized in Paper Mario, released in the year 2000. In this game, players discover Bowser's diary, a personal journal that reveals his innermost thoughts. And what those thoughts reveal is startling. Bowser has feelings for Princess Peach. He writes about her with an almost adolescent mixture of desire and frustration. He doesn't just want to use her for political purposes, he wants her to want to be with him. This was the moment when Bowser's motivation transformed from conquest to romance, albeit a deeply twisted version of romance. His kidnappings became acts of courtship in his mind, attempts to win Peach over through displays of power and persistence. That this courtship involved capturing her against her will, imprisoning her, threatening her kingdom, and forcing her into marriage apparently strikes Bowser as reasonable tactics. In his worldview, showing someone you're strong and determined is how you prove you're worthy of their affection. Peach, for her part, has consistently and clearly rejected Bowser's advances. She does not return his feelings. She finds his behavior abhorrent. In multiple games, including Super Mario Odyssey and the Super Mario Bros. Movie, she explicitly refuses his marriage proposals and actively works against him. The feeling is decidedly not mutual. Yet Bowser persists in his pursuit, interpreting her resistance as a challenge to overcome rather than a clear message to leave her alone. This dynamic raises uncomfortable questions about Bowser's character. His pursuit of Peach, when examined closely, has elements of obsession and stalking. He refuses to accept her rejection. He believes that if he can just demonstrate his power convincingly enough, she will finally see that they belong together. This is not healthy behavior. It's not romantic in any positive sense. It's the mindset of someone who cannot or will not accept that another person's feelings are not subject to conquest. Yet the games generally play this dynamic for comedy rather than tragedy. Bowser's love for Peach is treated as misguided and foolish rather than threatening or sinister. This is partly because of the overall tone of the Mario series, which tends toward the lighthearted and whimsical. But it's also because Bowser never actually succeeds. His attempts to force Peach into marriage are always thwarted before they can be completed. The threat never becomes reality, and so it remains in the realm of the cartoonish rather than the truly disturbing. In the Super Mario Bros. Movie, this dynamic receives perhaps its fullest exploration. Jack Black's portrayal of Bowser gives the character a surprising amount of emotional depth. We see Bowser's genuine belief that he and Peach are meant to be together. We witness his joy at the prospect of marrying her and his rage when that prospect is threatened. The movie even includes a musical number, Peaches, in which Bowser serenades the absent princess, pouring out his feelings in a power ballad that is simultaneously ridiculous and oddly sincere. What makes this work is the film's willingness to acknowledge both the absurdity and the underlying sadness of Bowser's situation. He genuinely loves Peach. Those feelings are real to him, but his expression of those feelings through kidnapping and coercion makes them toxic. He cannot have what he wants because what he wants is another person's autonomy, something that cannot be taken by force. This is Bowser's tragedy, though it's a tragedy entirely of his own making. Underneath the romantic obsession lies another, perhaps even more fundamental motivation. Ego. Bowser's sense of self-worth is enormous. He refers to himself with grand titles. He decorates his castles with his own image. He demands respect and admiration from everyone around him. This ego drives much of his behavior, including his fixation on Peach. Peach represents something Bowser cannot have, and that in itself makes her more desirable to him. She is a challenge, a prize, a symbol of his worthiness. If he can win her love, it proves he is the greatest. If the princess chooses him over Mario, it validates everything he believes about himself. The conquest of the Mushroom Kingdom would be nice, certainly, but the conquest of Peach's heart would be the ultimate triumph, the vindication of his ego. This is why Bowser cannot let go. To accept Peach's rejection would be to accept that he is not as great as he believes himself to be. It would mean acknowledging that perhaps Mario is better than him in ways that matter to Peach. For someone with Bowser's massive ego, this is unthinkable. So he continues pursuing her, not because he truly believes each new attempt will succeed where others failed, but because giving up would be admitting defeat in a way that losing battles never quite does. There's also an element of habit to Bowser's motivation. He has been kidnapping Peach for so long that it has become what he does, part of his identity. Imagine Bowser waking up one day and deciding not to kidnap Peach, not to threaten the kingdom, not to build elaborate castles full of traps. What would he do instead? Who would he be? His entire life revolves around this conflict. Remove it, and what remains? This is the trap of the eternal villain. The role becomes the person. Bowser is the bad guy. That's his job, his purpose, perhaps the only thing that gives his existence meaning. To stop being the villain would be to lose himself, and that's more frightening than any defeat Mario might inflict. Yet there are moments, rare but present, where we see hints that Bowser is capable of more than villainy. In Super Mario RPG, when he's forced to join forces with Mario to reclaim his castle from a greater threat, we see him working cooperatively, even showing concern for other party members. In Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story, when he's battling to reclaim his own body from Fawful's control, his determination and strength become heroic rather than villainous. These moments suggest that Bowser's motivation is not purely evil for evil's sake. He's capable of honor, loyalty, even heroism when the situation demands it. But these qualities are always channeled back into his primary role. He helps Mario defeat Smithy so he can go back to being Mario's main antagonist. He fights Fawful to reclaim his castle so he can use it to threaten the kingdom once more. Even his better impulses serve his ultimate goal of being the King of Koopas, the primary villain, the bad guy that everyone knows and fears. Perhaps the truest answer to why Bowser does what he does is simply because he is Bowser. The role and the character have become inseparable. He kidnaps princesses and threatens kingdoms and builds lava castles because that is what Bowser does. It's his nature, his purpose, his destiny. Trying to understand his motivation beyond this is like trying to understand why the sun rises in the east. It just does. It's the fundamental rule of the universe he inhabits. But that doesn't make the question any less interesting. Because in examining Bowser's motivations, we're really examining human motivations, the things that drive us to pursue goals even when success seems impossible. Ego, obsession, habit, identity, the fear of being irrelevant. All of these are deeply human concerns. Bowser may be a fire-breathing turtle dragon, but the forces that drive him are immediately recognizable to anyone who has ever wanted something they couldn't have or refused to give up on a dream that seemed futile. And perhaps that's why, despite his villainous nature, despite his consistent failure, despite his often problematic behavior, we find ourselves understanding Bowser. Not agreeing with him, not excusing his actions, but understanding where those actions come from. We've all felt that stubborn refusal to accept defeat. That conviction that surely, this time, things will work out. That need to prove ourselves, to be recognized, to win the respect or love of someone important to us. Bowser takes these universal feelings and amplifies them to ridiculous extremes. But the core emotions remain recognizable. And that recognition creates a strange sort of empathy, a connection across the divide between villain and audience. We wouldn't do what Bowser does, but we understand why he does it. And in understanding, we find ourselves hoping, against all reason and experience, that maybe someday, somehow, things will work out for the King of Koopas. They won't, of course. They never do. But hope springs eternal, even for villains. There is a psychological phenomenon known as the sunk cost fallacy. It describes our tendency to continue investing in something because we've already invested so much, even when continuing is irrational, and all evidence suggests we should stop. People stay in failing relationships because they've already spent years together. Businesses pour money into doomed projects because they've already spent so much. We humans are remarkably bad at cutting our losses and walking away. If there were ever a fictional embodiment of the sunk cost fallacy, it would be Bowser. He has invested decades of effort into conquering the Mushroom Kingdom and winning Princess Peach. He has built countless castles, assembled armies, developed elaborate schemes, suffered innumerable defeats. The rational thing to do, given this track record, would be to pivot to a new strategy or perhaps pursue different goals entirely. But Bowser cannot. He will not. The investment is too deep, the pattern too ingrained. Every defeat reinforces his need to try again. Each loss becomes evidence that he needs to try harder, do more, be bigger. The logical conclusion from his string of failures would be that his approach is fundamentally flawed. But Bowser's ego will not allow him to reach this conclusion. Instead, each defeat is explained away as a fluke, bad luck, Mario getting lucky. Anything except the truth that his methods do not work. This is not stupidity on Bowser's part. He is, by all evidence, quite intelligent. He can build advanced machinery, command armies, use magic, engage in complex strategic thinking. His tactical planning in individual battles is often sophisticated. The problem is not a lack of intelligence, but rather an inability or unwillingness to apply that intelligence to questioning his fundamental assumptions. In psychology, this is called cognitive inflexibility, the difficulty in adapting thinking in response to changing environments or feedback. Bowser shows this trait consistently. He has a model of how things should work. He should be able to kidnap Peach. He should be able to defeat Mario. His power should be sufficient to conquer the kingdom. When reality doesn't match this model, he doesn't revise the model. He tries to force reality to conform. There's also an element of what psychologists call learned helplessness in reverse. Normally, learned helplessness describes how repeated failure leads to giving up, to a belief that success is impossible. Bowser demonstrates the opposite. Repeated failure seems to reinforce his belief that he can succeed, that he must succeed. Each defeat is not evidence of impossibility, but rather motivation to try again. This is learned persistence, an internalized belief that if he just keeps trying, eventually things will work out. This persistence would be admirable if applied to worthwhile goals. People who refuse to give up in the face of adversity, who keep trying despite repeated setbacks, are often celebrated as heroic. The difference with Bowser is that his goals are villainous, and his persistence serves only to perpetuate a harmful pattern. But the psychological mechanism is the same. He is driven by an unshakable conviction that his goals are achievable if he just refuses to accept defeat. Bowser's self-talk, glimpsed occasionally in the games, reveals a lot about his psychology. He doesn't view his defeats as true failures. Instead, they're setbacks, temporary obstacles, tests of his worthiness. When he falls into lava, he's not thinking about how this is the 20th time this exact thing has happened. He's thinking about how next time he'll make sure there's no axe for Mario to reach. When his castle explodes, he's already planning the even bigger castle he'll build to replace it. This reframing of defeat as merely temporary setback is a coping mechanism. It allows Bowser to maintain his self-image as a powerful, successful villain despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. In his internal narrative, he's not a loser. He's a persistent fighter who faces a worthy adversary and occasionally comes up short but will ultimately prevail. This narrative is essential to his ability to continue. Without it, the cognitive dissonance between his ego and his actual track record would be unbearable. There's also something to be said about Bowser's relationship with Mario in psychological terms. They are locked in what could be called an eternal rivalry, but it's more than that. They need each other. Mario needs Bowser to be the villain, to give his heroism purpose and direction. And Bowser needs Mario to be the opponent, the obstacle that makes his eventual victory meaningful. When Bowser teams up with Mario in games like Super Mario RPG or Super Paper Mario, it's notable how comfortable they seem to be in each other's presence despite their antagonism. They know each other's patterns, each other's abilities, each other's limitations. They've been dancing this dance for so long that they're perfectly in sync. There's a strange sort of intimacy in such prolonged conflict, a deep familiarity that might, in other circumstances, be called friendship. But they can never be friends, not truly, because their roles won't allow it. Bowser must be the villain. Mario must be the hero. To change these roles would be to fundamentally alter who they are, so they remain locked in opposition, each defeat strengthening rather than weakening the connection between them. From a behavioral psychology perspective, Bowser's persistence despite consistent failure is interesting because it defies the principle of reinforcement. Normally, behaviors that are punished or unrewarded tend to diminish over time. Bowser's villainous schemes are consistently punished. He gets defeated, loses his castle, sometimes gets physically hurt, yet the behavior continues unabated. This suggests that something else is reinforcing the behavior, something internal rather than external. The reinforcement is likely the act itself rather than the outcome. Bowser enjoys being the villain. He finds satisfaction in building his castles, commanding his armies, confronting Mario. The journey gives him purpose, structure, identity. Even if the destination is always defeat, the path there provides meaning to his existence. This is why he can't stop. It's not about the victory anymore, if it ever was. It's about the process of pursuing victory, which has become an end in itself. There's a Japanese concept called ikigai, roughly translating to a reason for being, or the thing that makes life worth living. For many people, ikigai is found in relationships, career, hobbies, something that provides purpose and satisfaction. Bowser's ikigai is his eternal struggle against Mario for control of the Mushroom Kingdom and Peach's affection. Remove that struggle, and what purpose would he have? What would make his life worth living? This explains why, even in games where Bowser could theoretically succeed, where he gains immense power or seems to have Mario at his mercy, he never quite manages to close the deal. On some subconscious level, he may not want to. Because if he actually won, if he finally defeated Mario and married Peach and ruled the kingdom, what would he do then? The struggle that defines him would be over. He would have achieved his goals and lost his purpose in one stroke. The psychology of obsession is also relevant here. Bowser's fixation on Peach has all the hallmarks of obsessive behavior: the inability to accept rejection, the conviction that his feelings must be reciprocated, the elaborate fantasies of winning her over, the refusal to consider alternatives. This obsession has become core to his identity, and like all obsessions, it is resistant to logic or evidence. Obsessive individuals often engage in repetitive behaviors, returning to the same thoughts and actions over and over despite negative outcomes. They may recognize intellectually that the obsession is harmful or futile, but they cannot break free from it. The obsession provides a kind of psychological structure, a framework that, while painful, is familiar and therefore comforting in its own twisted way. Bowser's repeated kidnappings of Peach follow this pattern perfectly. Each kidnapping is slightly different in its details, but fundamentally the same. And each time, Bowser believes that this will be the time she finally sees his worth. The repetition is not a bug, but a feature. It's the obsessive behavior expressing itself, seeking resolution that can never come because the obsession itself makes resolution impossible. In psychology, there's also the concept of identity foreclosure, where someone adopts an identity without exploring alternatives. Bowser's identity as the King of Koopas, the kidnapper of princesses, the enemy of Mario, was established early and has never been questioned. He has foreclosed on this identity, committing to it fully without ever considering who else he might be or what else he might do. This foreclosure provides certainty and clarity. Bowser knows who he is, but it also limits him, trapping him in a role that may not actually serve his deeper needs or desires. If he were capable of identity exploration, of considering different possible selves, he might discover goals and pursuits that would bring him more genuine satisfaction. But that exploration requires a kind of vulnerability and openness that Bowser's ego cannot tolerate. The persistence that defines Bowser can be understood through multiple psychological lenses, and all of them paint a picture of someone trapped by their own psychology. Trapped by ego. Trapped by obsession. Trapped by cognitive inflexibility. Trapped by identity. Trapped by the reinforcing nature of the behavior itself. He is his own greatest prisoner, locked in a cycle that he cannot break, because to break it would be to cease being who he is. And yet, despite all this psychological analysis, despite understanding the mechanisms that drive his behavior, there remains something undeniably impressive about Bowser's persistence. Something that inspires a grudging respect. Yes, he's trapped in a cycle. Yes, his behavior is psychologically maladaptive. Yes, his goals are villainous and his methods problematic. But the sheer determination, the absolute refusal to give up, that quality transcends the particulars of what he's trying to achieve. In a strange way, Bowser embodies a kind of existential heroism. He is Sisyphus pushing his boulder up the hill, knowing it will roll back down, yet pushing anyway. He is the romantic who keeps believing in love despite heartbreak after heartbreak. He is everyone who has ever refused to accept that their dream is impossible, even when all evidence suggests it is. The tragedy is that Bowser's dream is not just impossible, but unworthy. If he were fighting for something noble, his persistence would be purely admirable. As it stands, we're left with the complex, uncomfortable truth that persistence and determination are neutral qualities, neither good nor bad in themselves. They take their moral valence from the goals they serve. Bowser serves goals that make him a villain, but the persistence with which he serves them makes him an unforgettable one. Among Bowser's many roles, villain, king, kidnapper, perhaps none is as surprisingly endearing as his role as father. The relationship between Bowser and his son, Bowser Jr., reveals a side of the King of Koopas that stands in stark contrast to his villainous nature. Here is a character who routinely kidnaps princesses and threatens kingdoms, yet who also demonstrates genuine love, care, and paternal devotion. This duality makes Bowser more complex, more interesting, and somehow more sympathetic despite his villainous actions. Bowser Jr. made his debut in Super Mario Sunshine, released in 2002. From the beginning, the relationship between father and son was central to the game's plot. Bowser told Jr. a lie, that Princess Peach was his mother and that Mario had kidnapped her. This deception motivated Jr. to take action, framing Mario for polluting Isle Delfino and kidnapping Peach himself in an attempt to reunite his supposed mother with his father. What's fascinating about this dynamic is how it reveals Bowser's priorities. He could have told Jr. any story to motivate him. He could have framed the mission in terms of conquest, or power, or defeating an enemy. Instead, he chose to make it about family, about reuniting a mother and son. This suggests that Bowser understands, on some level, what matters to children, what would motivate his son most powerfully, and what he chose was the promise of a complete family. When the truth is eventually revealed, when Jr. learns that Peach is not actually his mother, Bowser's response is telling. He admits the deception with something approaching sheepishness, clearly uncomfortable with being caught in the lie. But Jr.'s reaction is even more revealing. He says he already knew. He knew Peach wasn't his mother. But he went along with the plan anyway because he wanted to help his dad. Because spending time with his father, working toward his father's goals, that's what mattered to Jr. This exchange, brief as it is, speaks volumes about their relationship. Bowser loves his son enough to make up stories that give Jr. a sense of purpose and belonging. Jr. loves his father enough to go along with those stories even when he knows they're false. There's a genuine affection there, a connection that transcends the villainous nature of their actions. They may be doing bad things, but they're doing them together, as a family. In subsequent games, this father-son dynamic continues to develop. In New Super Mario Bros. Wii and its sequels, Jr. fights alongside his father, commanding troops and confronting Mario as part of the family business. In Super Mario Galaxy, Jr. helps with his father's cosmic conquest, showing that the apple hasn't fallen far from the tree in terms of ambition and determination. But through all of this, what shines through is Bowser's genuine pride in his son. The games show Bowser praising Jr., encouraging him, entrusting him with important tasks. He's not a distant or neglectful parent. He's actively involved in his son's life, teaching him the family trade, helping him develop his skills. Yes, that trade happens to be villainy, and those skills happen to be useful for kidnapping and combat, but the parenting itself shows care and attention. In Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story and its enhanced remake, Bowser Jr.'s Journey, we get perhaps the deepest exploration of their relationship. When Bowser is betrayed by Fawful and needs to reclaim his castle and his body, Jr. sets out on his own quest to help. Throughout Bowser Jr.'s journey, we see the young Koopa learning important lessons about leadership, respect, and earning loyalty rather than demanding it. Kamek, serving as a mentor figure to Jr. much as he did to Bowser himself, explicitly teaches these lessons. He explains that Bowser is respected by his minions not just because of his power, but because he treats them well, shows them respect, and earns their loyalty through his actions. This is an interesting revelation about Bowser's leadership style. For all his bluster and occasional shows of temper, he clearly inspires genuine devotion in his followers. And he's teaching Jr. to do the same. The relationship between Bowser and Jr. is interesting when contrasted with the Koopalings. For many years, the 7 Koopalings, Larry, Morton, Wendy, Iggy, Roy, Lemmy, and Ludwig, were presented as Bowser's children as well. They appeared in Super Mario Bros. 3 and various other games, each with distinct personalities and fighting styles. But in 2012, Shigeru Miyamoto officially stated that the current story is that the Koopalings are not Bowser's children, only Jr. is. This retcon, while somewhat controversial among fans, actually makes the dynamic more interesting. The Koopalings are now understood as high-ranking members of Bowser's army, something like adopted family or extremely trusted minions. Bowser clearly cares for them and gives them important responsibilities. But Junior is his actual son, his heir, the one who will presumably take over as King of the Koopas someday. The Koopalings' relationship with Junior, as explored in Bowser Jr.'s journey, shows the complexity of this family structure. Some of the Koopalings, particularly Roy, initially resent taking orders from Junior, seeing him as a spoiled prince rather than a real leader. Junior starts off acting entitled, expecting respect simply because of who his father is. But through the story, both Junior and the Koopalings grow. Junior learns to earn respect. The Koopalings learn to see his potential. By the end, they function as a real team, with Junior as their leader, not by birthright, but by merit. This arc is significant because it shows Bowser's parenting philosophy in action. He could have simply demanded that everyone follow Junior without question, but he understands that real leadership, real respect, must be earned. So, he allows Junior to face challenges, make mistakes, learn from them. It's tough love in a way, but it's love nonetheless. Bowser wants his son to grow into a worthy successor, not just inherit power he hasn't earned. The question of Junior's mother is one that Nintendo has deliberately left unanswered. Miyamoto has explicitly stated that Junior's mother is unknown and will remain that way. This creates an interesting narrative space. It means that Bowser is, as far as we know, a single father. He's raising Junior without a partner, handling all the parenting duties himself, while also managing his role as king and primary antagonist of the Mario series. This makes his dedication to fatherhood even more notable. He hasn't pawned Junior off on servants or nannies, though Kamek certainly helps. He's actively involved in his son's upbringing, teaching him personally, including him in his schemes. For all his faults, and they are numerous, Bowser shows up for his kid. That counts for something. There's also something poignant about Bowser's love for Junior contrasted with his futile pursuit of Peach. With Peach, his love is unrequited, obsessive, ultimately destructive. But with Junior, his love is returned, healthy in its own twisted way, genuinely fulfilling. If Bowser could recognize this difference, he might understand that he already has love in his life. He has his son, who looks up to him, wants to make him proud, fights by his side. That's real. That matters. The fantasy of winning Peach's love pales in comparison to the reality of Junior's affection. But Bowser seems unable to make this realization. Or perhaps he sees both as essential, the love he has and the love he seeks. Perhaps in his mind, he deserves both, and he won't settle for less. His ego demands that he be successful in love as well as in family. One without the other is incomplete. The games occasionally show tender moments between Bowser and Junior that humanize them despite their villainy. In Mario Party Island Tour, when Junior challenges his father, Bowser is proud rather than angry. He sees it as a sign that his son is growing strong and confident. In Paper Mario Color Splash, when Junior is hurt, Bowser's rage is terrible and protective. "You hurt my son" becomes his battle cry, and in that moment, he's not a villain. He's a father defending his child. These moments are important because they prevent Bowser from becoming a one-dimensional bad guy. They give him depth, make him relatable. We may not sympathize with his goals or condone his methods, but we can understand the fierce love of a parent for their child. That's universal. That transcends species and villainy and fictional status. There's an interesting parallel between Bowser's persistence in villainy and his approach to parenting. Just as he never gives up on conquering the Mushroom Kingdom despite endless defeat, He never gives up on being a good father, despite the challenges of single parenthood, while running a kingdom and maintaining an army. He balances responsibilities that would overwhelm most people. He finds time for Junior, even while plotting his next scheme. His dedication to both his villainous goals and his paternal duties is absolute. In a way, Junior represents what Bowser is fighting for beyond just ego and obsession. He's building an empire for his son to inherit. He's modeling strength and determination for the next generation. Every castle he builds, even though they all get destroyed, is ultimately about creating a legacy for Junior. Every confrontation with Mario, win or lose, teaches lessons about facing adversity that Junior absorbs and internalizes. If Bowser ever did succeed in his goals, if he actually conquered the Mushroom Kingdom and married Peach and defeated Mario permanently, would that actually be good for Junior? The struggle, the challenge, the constant striving, these shape character in ways that easy victory never could. By always losing, yet always trying again, Bowser teaches his son the most important lesson: that you get back up, that you keep fighting, that defeat is only permanent if you let it be. This is perhaps the most valuable thing Bowser gives to Junior, not his kingdom or his power or his vast armies, but his example of persistence. And Junior has internalized this lesson completely. He shows the same determination, the same refusal to accept defeat. Like father, like son. The cycle will continue through Junior even after Bowser is gone. The pattern perpetuates itself across generations. But that's far in the future. For now, we have Bowser and Junior working together, fighting together, falling into lava together, and picking themselves up to try again together. Whatever else can be said about Bowser, he's there for his kid. And in a strange way, that makes him not just a villain, but a hero, at least in Junior's eyes. And maybe that's the only opinion that truly matters to him. To fully appreciate the scope of Bowser's failures, we must chronicle them. Not every defeat, that would take volumes, but the major ones, the defining confrontations that have shaped his story and Mario's across the decades. Each defeat tells us something about Bowser, about Mario, about the nature of their eternal struggle. Together, they form a portrait of persistence in the face of overwhelming evidence that persistence is futile. The first defeat, the template for all that followed, came in Super Mario Bros. 8 Castles, 8 confrontations. In 7 of them, Mario faced imposters, fake Bowsers that dissolved into lesser enemies when struck with fireballs. But in the 8th, the real Bowser waited. The bridge suspended over lava, the fire breath, the hammer throws, and behind him, just out of reach, an axe. Cut the bridge, watch the King of Koopas fall, rescue the princess, the pattern established. This defeat was iconic not for its complexity, but for its simplicity. It reduced the confrontation to its essential elements: an obstacle, a mechanism to overcome it, the satisfaction of watching the villain fall. But even in this simplicity, something was present that would define all future defeats. Bowser's own infrastructure, his own castle, his own bridge, contributed to his downfall. He had built the mechanism of his own defeat. Super Mario Bros. 3 expanded the concept. Multiple confrontations with Bowser through different worlds, each more elaborate than the last. When finally Mario reached Bowser's castle in Darkland, the battle became more dynamic. The floor broke away beneath them. Bowser could break through the bricks with ground pounds, but ultimately, he too could fall through the broken floor, plummeting to defeat. Another variation on the theme of using the environment against him. Super Mario World introduced Bowser's flying Koopa clown car, adding aerial elements to the confrontation. Bowser would drop Mecha Koopas from above, mechanical wind-up enemies that could be picked up and thrown back at him. The message clear: your own weapons will be your undoing. The clown car became a signature element of Bowser's arsenal, appearing in many future games, always looking simultaneously menacing and faintly ridiculous. But it was Super Mario 64 that revolutionized Bowser battles. No longer confined to 2 dimensions, the confrontations took place in 3-dimensional arenas floating in darkness. Bowser could circle Mario, breathing fire, launching shockwaves. But the core mechanic was brilliant in its implementation of the pattern. Mario had to grab Bowser by the tail, spin him in circles, and throw him into spiked bombs positioned around the arena's edge. 3 battles structured this way. The first in Bowser in the Dark World, requiring 1 hit. The second in Bowser in the Fire Sea, requiring 2 hits and introducing Bowser's ability to warp across the platform. The third in Bowser in the Sky, requiring 3 hits and taking place on a star-shaped platform that Bowser could break apart with his ground pounds. Each escalation made the battle more difficult, but the core remained constant. Use his own momentum against him. The beauty of this design is how it embodied the physics of the confrontation. Bowser was big, heavy, powerful, but that size and weight became liabilities when Mario spun him. The very attributes that made him threatening were turned into weaknesses. And there was something almost playful about it, spinning the King of Koopas like a discus thrower before launching him at explosives. It shouldn't have been funny, but it was. Super Mario Sunshine took a different approach. The final battle, atop Corona Mountain in a giant hot tub, was almost absurdly casual. Bowser and Jr. relaxing in the water, while Bowser breathed fire and splashed boiling water at Mario. The arena consisted of 5 platforms with symbols on them, and Mario had to ground pound all 5 while avoiding attacks. Simple in concept, but the setting made it memorable. Who else would think to have a final boss battle in a hot tub? The Galaxy games elevated everything to cosmic scale. In Super Mario Galaxy, Bowser aimed to create an empire at the center of the universe, powered by stolen grand stars. The confrontations with him took place on spherical platforms, utilizing the game's unique gravity mechanics. Mario had to ground pound blue spots on the surface, while Bowser attacked with flames and shockwaves. When struck, Bowser would curl into his shell and spin across the platform, dangerously out of control. 3 hits, as always, and he would fall, roaring in frustration. The final battle, the fate of the entire universe hanging in the balance, took this formula to its ultimate expression. The music swelled, dramatic and operatic. The platforms burned and crumbled. Bowser himself grew enormous, his size matching his ambition. And when finally defeated, the collapse wasn't just personal, but cosmic. The galaxy itself seemed to implode, only to be reborn. Bowser's defeat had consequences beyond himself, reshaping reality. Yet even this would not be permanent. Super Mario Galaxy 2 escalated further. Bowser, having consumed the power of grand stars, grew to enormous size before the adventure even began. Throughout the game, confrontations with this giant Bowser punctuated Mario's journey. The final battle combined everything that had come before. Meteors rained down, platforms shifted and broke. Bowser's attacks came from multiple directions. The ground pound mechanic returned, but now the stakes felt higher, the difficulty more punishing. When the colossal Bowser finally fell, it felt earned in a way few defeats did. New Super Mario Bros. Introduced Dry Bowser, the skeletal form Bowser took after falling into lava. Even reduced to bones, he fought on, commanding his armies, plotting revenge. This seemed the ultimate expression of Bowser's refusal to die. Strip away the flesh, and still the will persists. Eventually, Bowser Jr. revived his father, by throwing his bones into a cauldron with magic, restoring him to full health. The message clear: Bowser may lose, but Bowser always comes back. The final battle of New Super Mario Bros. Wii became famous for its scale. After Bowser falls into lava, apparently defeated, Kamek arrives and uses magic to transform him into a giant. The screen can barely contain his massive form. He pursues Mario and the other players through his own castle, breathing fire, destroying platforms. Only by reaching an enormous switch at the end and activating it can the players send the giant Bowser plummeting once more. It's spectacular, ridiculous, and utterly memorable. Super Mario 3D Land and 3D World played with perspective and space in their Bowser battles. In 3D Land, Bowser appeared as a shadow before the final confrontation, creating a sense of anticipation. The actual battle involved recognizing patterns in his attacks and using the environment, as always, to engineer his defeat. In 3D World, Bowser gained the Super Bell power-up, transforming into Meowser, a cat version of himself that climbed a massive tower. The image of Bowser with cat ears should not have been intimidating, yet somehow it was. Super Mario Odyssey perhaps provided the most elaborate and memorable defeat in the series. The game culminated with a wedding, Bowser's attempt to finally marry Peach by force in the strange and beautiful world of the Moon Kingdom. The battle began conventionally enough, with Mario using Cappy to possess Bowser's hat and punch him. But after the initial phase, the arena crumbled, and Mario fell into the moon's interior. What followed was stunning. Bowser pursued Mario through a collapsing landscape. To escape, Mario had to use Cappy to possess Bowser himself. Controlling the King of Koopas, punching through walls, feeling his massive power, only to have that power turn to defeating him once more. It was the ultimate expression of the pattern, not just using Bowser's weapons against him, but using Bowser himself against Bowser. And after the escape, after Peach was freed, came a final twist. Both Bowser and Mario tried to propose to Peach simultaneously, competing for her hand even in the moment of defeat. Peach, fed up with both of them, rejected them both and flew off alone. Bowser and Mario, eternal enemies, were left standing together, united in romantic failure. It was funny, touching, and somehow perfect. Bowser's Fury introduced Fury Bowser, a corruption-influenced version that towered over the landscape, emerging periodically to rain destruction down on everything around him. This Bowser felt genuinely threatening in a way few versions had. He was a force of nature, almost mindless in his rage. Yet even he could be defeated, through the power of the Gigabell that transformed Mario into a giant cat capable of matching Fury Bowser's scale. Kaiju battle ensued, and even in this elevated form, Bowser lost. Super Mario Bros. Wonder, the most recent main series game, brought Bowser back to 2D, but with a twist. Using a Wonder Flower, Bowser merged with Prince Florian's castle, transforming into a mobile fortress. This flying castle Bowser hybrid pursued Mario and friends through the Flower Kingdom, an ever-present threat. The final battle to separate Bowser from the castle and restore Prince Florian embodied both classic and innovative elements, proving that even after all these years, Nintendo could find new ways for Bowser to lose. Across all these defeats, certain patterns remain constant. Bowser always puts himself in a position where his own power or infrastructure can be turned against him. He never adapts his fundamental strategy despite its consistent failure. He falls dramatically, often into lava or off platforms into nothingness. He roars in frustration. And then, after some time passes, he returns, ready to try again. The methods of defeat grow more elaborate with each console generation, taking advantage of new technological capabilities. but the emotional arc remains the same. Confidence, confrontation, escalation, defeat, frustration. Each battle tells the same story in different words. And somehow, despite the repetition, or perhaps because of it, these moments remain satisfying. We know Bowser will lose. We've always known. But watching it happen, participating in it, never gets old. This is Bowser's gift to gaming. Not the threat he poses, but the catharsis of overcoming that threat. Every defeat is a release, a resolution, a satisfying conclusion to the conflict the game has built. And every defeat leads naturally to the next, because we know this isn't over. It's never over. Bowser will be back. The cycle continues, and we wouldn't have it any other way. There exists a strange subset of Mario games where Bowser is not the villain, where circumstances force him to ally with Mario and the others against a greater threat. These games are fascinating because they reveal aspects of Bowser's character that remain hidden in his typical villainous role. They show us what he values, how he thinks, what drives him beyond mere conquest. And perhaps most importantly, they show that Bowser is capable of growth, even if that growth never quite sticks. The first and perhaps most significant of these team-ups came in Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars for the Super Nintendo. The game opened with Bowser attempting yet another kidnapping of Princess Peach, only to be interrupted by a far greater threat. A giant sword, Exor, crashed into Bowser's keep, shattering the Star Road and scattering its pieces across the world. This new enemy, Smithy and his gang, represented a threat to everyone, including Bowser. What followed was remarkable. Bowser, after sulking for a time about losing his castle, eventually joined Mario's party as a playable character. The juxtaposition was delightful. Mario and Bowser, eternal enemies, working together. The game played this mostly for comedy, with Bowser constantly trying to maintain his villainous reputation while clearly enjoying being part of the adventure. Super Mario RPG gave Bowser personality in ways previous games had only hinted at. We saw him wax nostalgic about the good old days when his biggest problem was Mario coming to rescue Peach. We saw him show unexpected compassion toward his former minions who had moved on to peaceful lives, wishing them well rather than demanding they return to service. We saw him express genuine sadness when Gino's body began breaking down, treating the wooden warrior as a comrade rather than just a means to an end. But most importantly, we saw Bowser's motivation clearly expressed. He wasn't helping Mario to save the world, though that was a nice bonus. He was helping because Smithy had taken his castle, and Bowser wanted it back. This was personal. His pride demanded that he reclaim what was his, and if that meant teaming up with his arch-nemesis temporarily, so be it. The game ended with Bowser triumphantly reclaiming his castle, immediately beginning repairs and recruiting his minions back. The alliance was over. Bowser was back to being a villain. But for one adventure, we had glimpsed something else. A Bowser who could work with others, who could be a team player when his goals aligned with theirs, who was more than just an obstacle to be overcome. Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga for the Game Boy Advance presented another forced alliance. This time, the antagonist was Cackletta, a witch from the Bean Bean Kingdom who stole Princess Peach's voice. Bowser's initial motivation was predictable. He wanted to kidnap Peach himself, and Cackletta's interference was unacceptable. No one gets to kidnap the princess except him. It's a matter of professional pride. The game took delight in showing Bowser's fish-out-of-water experiences in the Bean Bean Kingdom. He was loud, obnoxious, constantly boasting and taking credit. Luigi, he consistently called Green Stash, or Green Mario, never bothering to learn his actual name. This disrespect for Luigi would remain consistent across several games, only ending years later in Dream Team when Bowser finally acknowledged Luigi by name after being impressed by their battle. Bowser's journey in Superstar Saga included some humiliation. He lost his memory at one point, becoming a supporting character named Rookie who helped the Mario Brothers without realizing who he was. When his memory returned, his outrage was spectacular. But through it all, even when working against Mario and Luigi, his actions ultimately helped stop Cackletta. The enemy of my enemy may not be my friend, but he can at least be a temporary ally. Super Paper. Mario elevated this concept to its fullest expression. The game's villain, Count Bleck, threatened to destroy all worlds, all dimensions, everything. This wasn't just the Mushroom Kingdom at stake. This was existence itself. And so Bowser found himself recruited, along with Peach, to help Mario save reality. What made this alliance work was how seriously the game took it. Bowser was a full playable character with his own unique abilities, his fire breath, his immense strength, his ability to terrify enemies just by flexing. The game didn't mock him for being on the hero's side. Instead, it respected that Bowser, for all his faults, was genuinely powerful and could contribute meaningfully to the cause. The game also explored Bowser's capacity for honor and even heroism. When Chunks, one of Count Bleck's minions, was in danger, Bowser acknowledged him as a worthy opponent and tried to save him, even risking himself in the process. When the situation grew dire, Bowser faced the challenges with courage and determination. He may have been a villain, but he was no coward, and he would not allow existence to end without a fight. Super Paper Mario also included one of the strangest moments in Mario history. Count Bleck forced Bowser to marry Princess Peach in a dark ceremony designed to unleash the Chaos Heart. This was everything Bowser had ever wanted, marriage to Peach, except it was against both their wills and would destroy everything. The monkey's paw wish of his dreams realized in the worst possible way, and tellingly, Bowser immediately worked to undo it, recognizing that this wasn't the victory he wanted. Mario and Luigi Bowser's inside story might be the definitive Bowser as hero story. Through magical trickery by Fawful, Bowser inhaled Mario and Luigi, who then spent the entire game inside his body. Meanwhile, Bowser himself confronted Fawful's takeover of his kingdom from the outside. Two adventures ran in parallel, with Bowser's sections focusing on his attempts to reclaim his castle and restore order. This game gave players direct control over Bowser for extended periods, and it was glorious. His power was emphasized at every turn. Where Mario and Luigi had to cleverly navigate challenges, Bowser could often just smash through them. His battles were straightforward expressions of overwhelming force. His personality, loud, boastful, quick to anger, permeated every interaction. But the game also showed Bowser's better qualities, his loyalty to his minions, his pride in his kingdom, his absolute refusal to accept defeat. When he discovered that Mario and Luigi were inside his body and had been helping him all along, his reaction was complex. Anger at the violation, grudging acceptance that he had needed the help, determination to finish things himself. The elite trio, Private Goomp, Corporal Paraplonk, and Sergeant Guy, provided comic relief but also demonstrated Bowser's capacity for forgiveness. They betrayed him twice, joining Fawful both times. Yet Bowser eventually forgave them, accepting their apology and acknowledging that everyone makes mistakes. This compassion, surprising from someone so quick to anger, revealed depth to his character. The game's climax involved Bowser achieving his giant form through a rush of adrenaline and positive emotions stimulated by Mario and Luigi inside him. This giant Bowser fought to reclaim his castle in a battle that was epic in scale. And when it was over, When Fawful was defeated and the kingdom restored, Bowser grudgingly acknowledged that Mario and Luigi had helped. Not grateful, never that, but aware that their alliance had been necessary. Mario and Luigi Dream Team continued this pattern. The threat of Phantasma and the power of the Dreamstone forced another alliance. Bowser's role was complex, sometimes antagonist, sometimes ally, shifting as his goals aligned with or diverged from the heroes. But notably, this was the game where Bowser finally learned Luigi's name, showing respect for the Green Plumber after their intense Dream World battle. Paper Mario. The Origami King provided perhaps the most touching alliance. King Ollie had transformed Bowser's minions into origami servants and planned to eliminate all non-paper life. This threat to his followers genuinely enraged Bowser. Throughout the game, he fought alongside Mario with unusual cooperation. When his castle was transformed into Origami Castle, when his minions were in danger, Bowser swallowed his pride and accepted Mario's help. The game's conclusion saw Bowser hosting a party to celebrate the restoration of his castle and minions. He invited Mario, Peach, and their friends, an unprecedented gesture of appreciation. The villain who had kidnapped Peach countless times, who had fought Mario for decades, throwing a party and being a gracious host. The temporary nature of this détente was understood by all. Soon enough, things would return to normal. But for one night, they could all just enjoy the moment. Mario and Luigi Brothership, the most recent entry in the series, features Bowser once again as a temporary ally against the threat of Zocket and Reclusa. The pattern continues, decades after it began. What all these alliances reveal is that Bowser is not evil for evil's sake. He has principles. He values his kingdom and his minions. He respects worthy opponents. He will fight to protect what's his, even if that means protecting things that technically belong to others. When the Mushroom Kingdom is threatened by someone other than himself, he takes it personally. That's his kingdom to threaten. Thank you very much. These team-ups also show that Bowser and Mario's relationship is more complex than simple heroism and villainy. They understand each other. They've been doing this dance for so long that they've developed a strange sort of mutual respect. Mario knows Bowser will always be back. Bowser knows Mario will always stop him. There's a comfort in that predictability, a structure to their conflict that gives both their lives meaning. But the alliances never last. When the greater threat is defeated, when the crisis is resolved, Bowser returns to his role as villain without hesitation. He's learned nothing from these experiences, or rather, he's learned things, but chooses not to apply those lessons to his fundamental goals. The capacity for heroism is there. The ability to work cooperatively exists. But Bowser's identity as the King of Koopas, as Mario's arch-nemesis, as the kidnapper of Princess Peach, that identity is too core to who he is to ever truly change. These games don't redeem Bowser. They complicate him. They show us that beneath the villainy is a character with depth, with principles, with the capacity for growth that he simply chooses not to pursue. And in that choice, in that willful embrace of his villainous role, there's something almost tragic. Because we've seen what Bowser could be if he chose differently. But he never does. The cycle continues. The alliance ends. And Bowser goes back to building castles and kidnapping princesses and inevitably losing to Mario once more. But for those brief moments of alliance, we glimpse something else. A path not taken, a possibility unfulfilled. A Bowser who could have been a hero, who possessed all the qualities heroism requires, who simply pointed those qualities in the wrong direction. And maybe that's the saddest defeat of all. Not losing to Mario, but losing to himself. to his own stubborn refusal to be anything other than what he's always been. For all his villainy, for all his defeats, for all his bombast and ego, Bowser is beloved by those who serve him. His minions, from the lowliest Goomba to his highest-ranking commanders, display genuine loyalty that goes beyond fear of punishment or promise of reward. This loyalty suggests something that the game's main narratives often overlook. Bowser is, in his own way, a good king, not good in the moral sense, but good in the sense of leadership, of earning devotion, of inspiring those who follow him. This aspect of Bowser's character is most thoroughly explored in the Mario RPG series, where extended interactions and dialogue give depth to relationships that remain unexplored in the main platforming games. What emerges from these explorations is a portrait of a leader who, despite his flaws, genuinely cares for his subjects and earns their loyalty through action rather than mere authority. In Super Mario RPG, we see several examples of this dynamic. When Bowser encounters former members of his army who have retired to peaceful lives in Monstro Town, his reaction is revealing. He doesn't demand they return to service. He doesn't punish them for desertion. Instead, he expresses happiness that they've found contentment, wishes them well, and moves on. This suggests that loyalty to Bowser is not slavery. His minions have agency, can choose to leave, and when they do, he respects that choice. Later in the same game, Bowser encounters a chain chomp that has gone feral, attacking everything in its path. Where others see a dangerous monster, Bowser sees a troubled friend. He approaches calmly, speaks soothingly, and the chain chomp recognizes him and settles down. This scene, brief as it is, shows a side of Bowser rarely seen. He has relationships with his creatures, understands them, can connect with them on a level that others cannot. The ending of Super Mario RPG reinforces this characterization. When Bowser reclaims his castle from Smithy, he doesn't immediately start barking orders and threatening his minions. Instead, he works alongside them in the reconstruction, physically laboring to rebuild his home. A king who works with his subjects rather than merely commanding them. This earns respect in ways that tyranny never could. Mario and Luigi Bowser's inside story provides perhaps the deepest exploration of the relationship between Bowser and his followers. The game is filled with moments that reveal his leadership style. When the elite trio, Private Goomp, Corporal Paraplonk, and Sergeant Guy repeatedly fail him and even betray him, his anger is real. But so is his eventual forgiveness. He acknowledges their efforts, accepts their apology, recognizes that loyalty sometimes wavers, but can be reclaimed. The game also introduces Starlo, who poses as Chippy to guide Bowser from within his body. Initially, Bowser treats Chippy as just another minion, ordering them around and expecting obedience. But over time, he begins to show genuine appreciation for Chippy's help. He listens to advice. He shows something approaching gratitude. And when he discovers Chippy's true identity as Starlo, his feeling of betrayal is as much about the violation of trust as the deception itself. Dream Team continues this development. When the elite trio fails spectacularly in their assigned tasks, Bowser doesn't punish them. Instead, he acknowledges that they did better than usual, shows them more respect than before. This suggests growth in his leadership. He's learning to motivate through encouragement rather than just threat. He's recognizing that his minions perform better when appreciated rather than merely feared. The game also features Bowser's giant dreamy form, creating perfect duplicates of his entire army. This is significant. When given the power to create anything, Bowser's first instinct is to recreate his minions, showing how much faith and respect he has for them. He doesn't imagine better minions or stronger ones. He duplicates exactly the ones he has, flaws and all, because they are his, and that makes them valuable to him. Paper Mario. The Origami King takes this even further. When King Ollie transforms Bowser's minions into origami servants, folding them against their will, Bowser's rage is personal and immediate. Throughout the game, his primary concern is freeing his followers and restoring them to their proper forms. His castle matters, certainly, but his minions matter more. A king who values his subjects over his throne is, in a fundamental way, a good king, even if his goals are villainous. The game's dialogue frequently shows minions speaking fondly of Bowser despite his temper. They joke about his ego and his frequent defeats, but with affection rather than mockery. They follow him not out of fear, but out of genuine loyalty. When given the choice between serving Bowser and joining the heroes, most choose Bowser without hesitation. That kind of devotion cannot be forced. It must be earned. Bowser Jr.'s Journey, the additional mode in the Bowser's Inside Story remake, explores this theme through Kamek's teachings to Jr. Kamek explicitly tells Bowser Jr. that his father is respected because he earns that respect. That Bowser treats his minions well, protects them, shows them consideration. This is why they follow him through defeat after defeat, why they keep coming back, why the Koopa Troop remains loyal, even when loyalty seems foolish. The game shows several examples of Bowser's care for his followers. He provides them with good equipment. He gives them important roles and responsibilities. He remembers their names and contributions. When they succeed, he praises them. When they fail, he pushes them to do better rather than simply punishing them. His leadership style, for all its bluster and occasional outbursts of temper, is fundamentally sound. This creates an interesting contrast with other villains in the Mario series. When Fawful takes over Bowser's castle in Bowser's Inside Story, the minions are forced to serve him through mind control. They don't choose to follow Fawful. They must be compelled. With Bowser, compulsion is unnecessary. They choose to serve him because he's earned their loyalty. He's shown them that he values them. He's proven that following him, win or lose, is worthwhile. There's also the matter of how Bowser's kingdom functions. It's clearly well organized. His armies are disciplined and effective, even if they consistently lose to Mario. His castles, fortresses, and airships are engineering marvels. His logistics must be impressive to support the constant castle building and army mobilizing he does. All of this requires capable administration, good morale, and effective leadership. A tyrant ruling through fear alone could not maintain such an operation. Bowser's relationship with Kamek exemplifies his capacity for genuine connection. Kamek raised him from infancy. The Magic Koopa is advisor, guardian, mentor, and something very close to a parent figure. Their interactions show mutual respect and affection. Bowser listens to Kamek's counsel, even when it contradicts his own desires. Kamek speaks to Bowser with a frankness that would be unthinkable if Bowser were a typical tyrant. Their relationship is built on decades of trust and genuine care for each other. The loyalty extends beyond his immediate forces to creatures and species that benefit from his rule. The various types of Koopas, from the common Koopa Troopa to the elite Hammer Brothers, all serve willingly. The Goombas, despite being among the weakest enemies, remain devoted. Lakitas control their clouds in Bowser's service. Bullet Bills fire themselves in his defense. Thwomps guard his castles. Bob-ombs explode on command. This diversity of species all working together suggests that Bowser's kingdom provides something valuable to all of them: stability, purpose, belonging. In some games, we see hints of Bowser's kingdom being quite pleasant if you're not actively being invaded by the heroes. His subjects go about their lives. They have homes, families, jobs. The Koopa Troop is not a slave army, but a professional military. The minions who guard his castles are doing their jobs, no different from guards anywhere. When defeated, they often flee rather than being killed, suggesting that Mario's invasion is dangerous for them, but not necessarily fatal. This humanizes Bowser's forces in interesting ways. They're not mindless monsters. They're people, working for their king, defending their kingdom. From their perspective, Mario is the invader, the threat, the one who keeps destroying their carefully built defenses and disrupting their lives. Bowser may be trying to conquer the Mushroom Kingdom, but to his own subjects, he's defending their home and way of life. It's all a matter of perspective. The games occasionally show what Bowser's kingdom looks like when not under attack. In Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story, before Fawful's betrayal, we see Bowser's castle as a functioning seat of power. There are meetings. There's administration. Things run smoothly. Bowser may be a villain to the Mushroom Kingdom, but he's a competent ruler to his own people. That competence inspires confidence and loyalty. Even Bowser's temper, legendary and fierce, doesn't seem to inspire lasting fear in his minions. They crack jokes about it. They work around it. When he's angry, they weather the storm, knowing it will pass. This suggests that his anger, while real and sometimes frightening, is not abusive in a way that destroys loyalty. He doesn't hurt his minions in his rages. He yells, he rants, but then he moves on. And importantly, when he's wrong, he can be reasoned with. He listens to Kamek. He accepts counsel from his commanders. His ego is massive, but it doesn't completely blind him to reality. The evidence is clear across multiple games and story arcs. Bowser is a good king to his own people. Not good in the sense of moral virtue, but good in the fundamental sense of leadership. He earns loyalty rather than merely commanding it. He cares for his subjects. He works alongside them. He appreciates their efforts and forgives their failures. He builds a kingdom that functions well and provides for its citizens. And perhaps most importantly, he inspires genuine affection from those who know him best. This complicates our understanding of Bowser as a villain. Villains are supposed to be hated, feared, loathed by all. But Bowser is loved by his people. He's a good father, a capable king, a loyal friend to those in his inner circle. The villainy is real, his goals remain destructive, but he's not a monster. He's a complex figure who happens to channel his positive qualities toward negative ends. And that makes him far more interesting than a simple bad guy ever could be. In the end, perhaps this is why his minions keep coming back after each defeat. Not because they're forced to, but because Bowser is worth following. Because he's earned their loyalty through years of leadership that, while flawed, genuinely cares about their well-being. They know he'll lose. They've seen it happen over and over. But they also know he'll get back up, start rebuilding, planning the next campaign. And they know he values them as part of that process. For a minion in a villain's army, you could do a lot worse than serving King Bowser. Bowser transcends the games he appears in. He has become a cultural icon, recognized even by people who have never played a Mario game. His image, his name, his role as the eternal antagonist, all of these have permeated popular culture in ways that few video game characters ever achieve. To understand Bowser's endless defeats, we must also understand his overwhelming success, not in conquest, but in becoming immortal through cultural permanence. The numbers tell part of the story. Bowser has appeared in over 170 games since his debut in 1985. The Super Mario franchise has sold hundreds of millions of copies worldwide, making it one of the most successful media franchises in history. Every person who has played a main series Mario game has encountered Bowser. Every defeat they inflicted on him has reinforced his place in gaming history. He has been defeated more times than almost any character in any medium, yet this repetition has made him more famous, not less. Recognition studies consistently rank Bowser among the most recognizable video game characters globally. Children who weren't alive when recent Mario games were released can still identify him. His silhouette is iconic. The spiked shell, the horns, the shock of red hair, the imposing stance. You could show someone Bowser's shadow and they would know who it was. That level of recognition puts him in rarefied company, alongside characters like Mickey Mouse or Superman. Part of this recognition comes from Nintendo's masterful character design. Bowser looks like a villain. Every aspect of his appearance communicates threat. The spikes suggest danger. The horns invoke demons and dragons. The fire breath is primal and terrifying. The size advantage over Mario makes him imposing, yet he's also cartoonish enough to not be truly frightening. Children aren't traumatized by Bowser. They're excited to face him. The design walks a perfect line between menacing and approachable. This design has remained remarkably consistent over decades. Bowser in Super Mario Bros. And Bowser in the most recent game are clearly the same character despite the vast gulf in graphical capability. The core elements remain unchanged. This consistency has been crucial to building recognition. When a child picks up their first Mario game, they're meeting the same Bowser their parents met, and their parents before them. He's a constant across generations. The meme culture of the internet has embraced Bowser enthusiastically. His countless defeats have become fodder for jokes about persistence in the face of futility. His unrequited love for Peach spawns endless fan content, some comedic, some oddly touching. His relationship with Bowser Jr. inspires wholesome memes about fatherhood. His role in Super Mario RPG and the other team-ups creates content about unlikely alliances and redemption arcs. The Super Mario Bros. Movie in 2023 introduced Bowser to an entirely new generation and brought him into mainstream culture in unprecedented ways. Jack Black's vocal performance gave the character emotional depth while maintaining his threatening presence. The film's portrayal of Bowser's obsession with Peach, particularly through the song Peaches, became a viral sensation. The song, a power ballad about Bowser's love, was released as a single, reached music charts, and generated countless covers, parodies, and remixes. Suddenly, people who had never played a Mario game were singing along to Bowser's love ballad. The character broke out of gaming culture into general popular culture. TikTok was flooded with Peach's content. The phrase, "I love you." Peach became a meme. Jack Black performed the song at concerts. All of this kept Bowser relevant and visible in a way that transcended his role in the games. The movie also reinforced certain aspects of Bowser's character for mass audiences. His genuine love for Peach, however misguided. His massive ego and need for recognition. His imposing physical presence and power. His capacity for rage when thwarted, but also his almost pathetic vulnerability when his feelings are rejected. The film made Bowser sympathetic while never excusing his villainy. It acknowledged that he's the bad guy while helping audiences understand why he is the way he is. Critical and academic discussions of video game villains frequently center Bowser. He serves as the archetypal example of the simple, straightforward villain whose motivation and goals are easily understood. Unlike complex antagonists with tragic backstories or moral ambiguity, Bowser is straightforward in his villainy. This simplicity has made him a useful reference point in discussions of game design, narrative structure, and character development. Game designers cite Bowser as an example of effective antagonist design. He provides clear motivation for the player's journey. His presence creates stakes. His confrontations serve as satisfying climaxes to gameplay sections. His consistent defeat provides catharsis, yet he returns reliably, maintaining his threat level while allowing for repeated engagement. From a pure design perspective, Bowser is nearly perfect at fulfilling his role. Bowser has also influenced countless other games and villains. The template he established, the villain who kidnaps someone important and must be confronted at the end of a long journey through their domain, has been replicated thousands of times across the industry. Not all successfully, but Bowser set the standard. He showed that a villain doesn't need a complex backstory or philosophical motivation to be effective. Sometimes, wanting to conquer the world and kidnap the princess is motivation enough. The character has transcended gaming to appear in other media. He's been featured in animated series dating back to the late 80s and early 90s. He appeared in the notorious 1993 Super Mario Bros. Movie as President Koopa, a radically different interpretation that has since become a cult phenomenon in its own weird way. He's appeared in comics, manga, promotional materials, theme park attractions, and countless pieces of merchandise. Nintendo's theme parks feature Bowser prominently. Bowser's Castle is a centerpiece attraction at Super Nintendo World. Visitors can encounter animatronic Bowsers, pose with statue versions, buy Bowser merchandise. The character has become synonymous with the Mario franchise to such a degree that you cannot market Mario without including Bowser. He's not just the antagonist, he's a co-star. His presence is essential to the brand. The merchandising around Bowser is extensive. Plushies, action figures, costumes, t-shirts, posters. You can buy Bowser everything. Interestingly, Bowser merchandise is often marketed not as villain merchandise, but simply as character merchandise. Children want Bowser toys, not because they love villains, but because they love Bowser specifically. He's become divorced from simple villain status to become a beloved character in his own right. Cosplayers frequently choose Bowser, despite the challenge of his distinctive design. Creating a convincing Bowser costume requires significant skill and effort, with the shell, spikes, and head posing particular challenges. Yet Bowser cosplays appear regularly at gaming conventions, indicating his popularity among fans who invest serious time and resources into representing him. The academic study of video games has not ignored Bowser. Papers have been written analyzing his role in game narratives, his function as a design element, his evolution across console generations. He serves as a case study for discussions of persistence in gaming, the role of antagonists in player motivation, and the ways video game stories structure themselves around conflict resolution. For a character who rarely speaks in full sentences in the main games, he's generated significant scholarly attention. Bowser's status as a Nintendo character has made him part of broader discussions about the company's approach to character design and intellectual property management. Nintendo is known for being protective of its characters and maintaining strict quality control over how they're represented. Bowser has benefited from this care. He's never been cheapened or diminished through overexposure or poor quality appearances. Every game he's in maintains his character integrity, even when reinterpreting him for different contexts. The Super Smash Bros. Series deserves special mention in discussing Bowser's cultural impact. Starting with Super Smash Bros. Melee, Bowser became playable, allowing players to embody the King of Koopas directly. His fighting style emphasizes his size, strength, and power. Playing as Bowser gives a sense of his capabilities in a way watching him as an end boss never could. And the series' crossover nature has introduced Bowser to fans of Nintendo franchises who might not play Mario games, further expanding his recognition. In Smash Bros. Tournaments and competitive play, Bowser has gained respect. He's been played by professional players, featured in high-level matches, proven viable in competitive contexts. This legitimizes him beyond his role as a PvE boss character. He can hold his own against heroes from across gaming when given equal footing. The villain is not weak, merely persistent in the face of specifically designed odds. The cultural conversations around Bowser have evolved with broader social awareness. His pursuit of Peach, despite her clear rejection, has drawn criticism as problematic, reflecting real-world issues of consent and harassment. The game's framing of this dynamic as comedic or romantic has been questioned. These discussions are worth having, and they engage seriously with Bowser as a character whose actions carry implications, even in a fantastical context. Yet even these critical discussions reinforce Bowser's cultural relevance. Characters that don't matter don't generate thoughtful critique. The fact that people care enough about Bowser's portrayal to engage critically with it demonstrates his significance. He's not just a video game villain. He's a cultural artifact that reflects and influences how we think about heroes, villains, persistence, love, and conflict. Bowser has become bigger than any single game or story. He exists in a cultural space where his defeats cease to matter as much as his continued presence. He could lose 1,000 more times and it wouldn't diminish him. Because at this point, Bowser isn't fighting to conquer the Mushroom Kingdom. He's already conquered something far more impressive: our collective imagination, our cultural consciousness. He is, in every way that matters, immortal. And immortality is the ultimate victory, even for a villain who loses every battle. What does it mean to lose? Not just once, in a moment of bad luck or insufficient preparation, but continuously, endlessly, across decades and hundreds of confrontations. What does it mean when defeat becomes not an aberration, but the defining pattern of your existence? This is the question at the heart of Bowser's story, and its answer reveals something profound about persistence, identity, and the strange nobility that can exist even in futility. In most narratives, defeat serves as either an ending or a catalyst for change. The villain is vanquished and ceases to be a threat. Or the hero loses, learns from the defeat, adapts, and returns stronger. Defeat is temporary, a moment in a larger arc that ultimately leads somewhere different. But Bowser's defeats are neither. They are not endings, because he always returns. And they are not catalysts for meaningful change, because he never meaningfully adapts his approach. His defeats exist in their own category, perpetual and static, a permanent state of losing that somehow sustains rather than destroys him. This should be demoralizing. Psychology tells us that repeated failure without success leads to learned helplessness, depression, loss of motivation. Yet Bowser demonstrates none of these. He remains energetic, confident, determined. Each defeat seems to affect him only momentarily, before his natural optimism and ego reassert themselves. He believes, truly believes, that next time will be different. This belief, impervious to evidence, is either admirable or concerning depending on how you look at it. Perhaps Bowser has internalized a truth that the rest of us struggle with: that success and failure are not the only measures of a life. That the act of striving, of trying, of refusing to quit has value independent of outcomes. This is not an easy truth to accept. We're conditioned to value winners and dismiss losers. We celebrate achievement and look down on persistent failure. But Bowser rejects this framework entirely. He will try forever, even knowing he'll likely fail forever, because the trying itself is what gives his existence meaning. There's a parallel here to the myth of Sisyphus, condemned by the gods to push a boulder up a mountain for eternity, only to watch it roll back down and have to start again. The philosopher Albert Camus famously used this myth to explore absurdism and the human condition. Camus argued that we must imagine Sisyphus happy, finding meaning in the struggle itself rather than in achieving an impossible goal. Bowser is a video game Sisyphus, pushing his boulder of conquest up the mountain of Mario's opposition, watching it roll back down with each defeat, then starting again. But where Sisyphus was explicitly condemned by divine punishment, Bowser is not. He chooses this. He could, theoretically, stop at any time. He could pursue different goals, live a different kind of life. Yet, he doesn't. The cycle is not imposed from without, but generated from within. This makes his situation simultaneously more tragic and more admirable than Sisyphus. Tragic because it's self-imposed and therefore could be escaped. Admirable because it represents pure will, choice maintained in defiance of all reason. The defeats teach us something about the nature of villainy itself. Bowser is the villain. This is his role. But his villainy doesn't consist of competent evil or successful malevolence. It consists of trying to do evil and consistently failing. Yet he remains the villain nonetheless. The role is not contingent on success. It's defined by attempt, by opposition, by occupying the space that the hero must overcome. In this sense, Bowser succeeds at being a villain every time he sets up another castle and kidnaps Peach again, regardless of whether he wins the final battle. This reframes what victory might mean for Bowser. Perhaps he's not actually trying to permanently conquer the Mushroom Kingdom or win Peach's love. Perhaps, on some level, he may not consciously acknowledge his real goal is to perpetuate the struggle itself, to ensure that there's always another castle, another confrontation, another battle. Because without that struggle, who is he? What defines him? The defeats aren't failures to achieve his stated goals. They're successful perpetuations of his true goal, maintaining his identity as Mario's eternal antagonist. The defeats also speak to the nature of gaming itself. Players need challenges to overcome. They need villains to defeat. If Bowser ever truly won, if he permanently conquered the kingdom and Mario couldn't stop him, the game would be over in an unsatisfying way. Bowser's defeats are necessary for the game to work, for the story to continue, for the franchise to persist. His endless losing is the foundation upon which Mario's endless heroism is built. They need each other. Bowser's defeats enable Mario's victories, and Mario's victories validate Bowser's role. There's a certain generosity in this, though Bowser would never frame it that way. By being the villain who always loses yet always returns, he provides structure and purpose not just to Mario's adventures, but to the entire world of the Mushroom Kingdom. He gives the heroes someone to heroically defeat. He gives his own minions purpose and identity. He maintains the balance between order and chaos that makes the world interesting. Without Bowser, the Mushroom Kingdom would be peaceful but boring. He is the necessary disruption, the force that makes heroism possible. Looking at Bowser's defeats from this perspective, they cease to be shameful or pitiful. They become essential. Every defeat is not a loss, but a contribution to the larger pattern, the eternal story being told. Bowser plays his role perfectly because he loses perfectly. He's always threatening enough to seem like a real danger, never threatening enough to actually destroy the world. He finds that perfect balance, maintaining tension without ever letting it resolve permanently. The defeats also reveal something about human nature and our relationship with persistence. We tell stories about never giving up, about trying until you succeed, but we're uncomfortable with stories about trying forever and never succeeding. That hits too close to home for many people. Jobs we can't quite excel at, relationships that don't work but we can't let go of, dreams that seem increasingly distant but we can't abandon. Bowser embodies the uncomfortable reality that sometimes you can try your absolute hardest and still not achieve what you're striving for. Yet he also embodies something hopeful. Because if Bowser can face defeat after defeat and still get up to try again, then maybe we can too. Maybe persistence has value even when it doesn't lead to success. Maybe the trying itself is enough. Maybe the measure of a character, fictional or real, is not whether they win or lose, but whether they refuse to quit. By this measure, Bowser is the most successful character in gaming. He has never, ever quit. His defeats have made him more than a character. They've made him a symbol of persistence against odds, of ego that will not be crushed, of love that will not be denied even when it should be, of villainy that paradoxically makes us smile, of losing with such consistency that it becomes its own form of winning. The King of Koopas has been defeated more than perhaps any character in any medium, and yet he stands, will always stand, preparing for the next attempt, the next castle, the next confrontation. That is what defeat means for Bowser. It means another beginning, another chance, another castle to build, another army to muster, another scheme to hatch. Defeat is not his ending. It is his constant companion, his oldest friend, the thing that defines him and gives his existence shape. He wears his defeats like medals of honor, proof that he tried, he fought, he refused to accept the limitations placed upon him. And perhaps that's the ultimate meaning of Bowser's endless defeats. They're not about him failing. They're about him refusing to fail permanently. Every defeat that would end another villain's story is just the start of the next chapter of his. The defeats are not the story. The persistence despite the defeats is the story. And it's a story that resonates across cultures, across generations, across the boundary between the fictional and the real. Bowser loses. Bowser has always lost. Bowser will always lose. And Bowser will never, ever stop trying. That is the meaning of his defeats. Not futility, but eternal defiance. Not shame, but stubborn pride. Not an ending, but a perpetual beginning. The defeats make him who he is, and who he is will outlast them all. Night has fully fallen over the Mushroom Kingdom. Somewhere, in a castle that may be newly built or recently repaired, Bowser sits in his throne room. The day's planning is done. The latest scheme is in motion. Soon, tomorrow, or the next day or the next, Mario will come. They will fight. And if all goes according to pattern, Bowser will lose. He knows this, on some level. How could he not? But knowing and accepting are different things. In his mind, as he sits there surrounded by his minions, with Kamek by his side, and Bowser Jr. perhaps asleep in a nearby chamber, in his mind this time will be different. This castle is better designed. This army is better trained. This scheme is more clever. Surely, surely, this time Mario cannot overcome what has been prepared. Surely this time, victory is assured. It never is. It never has been. But tomorrow, Bowser will wake with renewed determination. He will check on his preparations. He will make final adjustments. And when the plumber arrives, when the confrontation begins, Bowser will fight with everything he has, believing in this moment that triumph is possible, that Peach will finally be his, that the Mushroom Kingdom will finally bow before him, that his place as the greatest villain in history will be secured through actual victory rather than merely through persistence. And when he falls, when the bridge is cut, or the bomb explodes, or the mechanism of his own design turns against him, when he tumbles into whatever abyss awaits this time, in that moment of falling, what does he think? Is it surprise? Is it anger? Is it a flash of recognition that this has happened before and will happen again? We cannot know. But we can imagine that somewhere in that fall, in that moment between defeat and recovery, there might be the briefest flicker of something like acceptance, like understanding, like peace with the pattern, but only for a moment, only in the fall. By the time he lands, by the time he crawls from whatever pit claimed him, the determination will have returned. The ego will have reasserted, and the planning for next time will begin, because there must be a next time, because Bowser is, ultimately, defined by the next time, by the eternal return to the struggle, by the refusal to let defeat be final. His legacy is already secure. 40 years of gaming history, hundreds of millions of players who have faced him, cultural immortality that most characters could only dream of. Future generations will know his name. They will battle him in their own time, in games yet to be created, facing defeat methods we cannot yet imagine. The technology will evolve. The graphics will improve. The gameplay will transform. But Bowser will remain. The King of Koopas. The kidnapper of princesses. Mario's eternal antagonist. The villain who cannot, will not, stop trying. There is something beautiful in this constancy. In a world of change and uncertainty, Bowser remains Bowser. He provides structure. He offers the comfort of the predictable within the excitement of the new. Each game may surprise us with innovations in how he's defeated, but the defeat itself is assured. We know how this story ends. We've always known. And yet, we play it again. We fight him again. We defeat him again. Because the journey matters more than the destination. Because the pattern itself has become sacred. In a strange way, Bowser has achieved a kind of enlightenment through his endless defeats. He exists in pure present tense. Each scheme is undertaken with full commitment, as if the past defeats don't exist. He has mastered the art of beginning again, of finding motivation after disappointment, of maintaining hope despite all evidence that hope is unfounded. These are not easy achievements. Most of us struggle with them daily. Bowser makes them look natural. The tragedy, if there is one, is that Bowser will never know peace, never know the satisfaction of achieved goals and rest earned. His story has no ending, only infinite middles. He will build and plan and fight forever, locked in combat with an opponent he cannot overcome, pursuing a princess who will never love him, defending an ego that experience should have long ago humbled. That is his curse, or perhaps his blessing, depending on how you look at it. For us, observing from outside the pattern, Bowser's endless defeats offer lessons if we choose to take them. About the value of persistence even when success seems impossible. About finding purpose in the struggle rather than the outcome. About defining yourself by how you handle defeat rather than whether you win. About the dignity of trying even when trying seems futile. About loving what you do enough to keep doing it regardless of results. But perhaps we overthink it. Perhaps the meaning of Bowser is simpler than all this philosophy and analysis. Perhaps he exists simply to be what he is. A great villain, a worthy opponent, a force that makes heroism necessary and meaningful. A father who loves his son. A king who commands loyalty. A turtle dragon who breathes fire and builds castles and refuses to accept that some goals might be unattainable. Tomorrow, Bowser will wake. He will prepare. Mario will come. They will fight. Bowser will lose. And the day after that, the pattern will begin again. This is not a tragedy. This is not a comedy. This is simply the story. The only story. The eternal story. And it is enough. Somewhere, right now, in some game being played on some console or computer or handheld device, Bowser is being defeated. A player is celebrating their victory. Peach is being rescued. The kingdom is safe once more. And in that moment of defeat, in that moment of falling, Bowser is already planning his return, already imagining tomorrow's castle, already refusing to accept that this is the end. Because for Bowser, there is no end, only the eternal middle, only the next attempt, only the unwavering conviction that this time, things will be different. They never are. They never will be. And somehow, beautifully, impossibly, that's exactly as it should be. The King of Koopas falls. The King of Koopas rises. The pattern continues. Forever. If you've enjoyed drifting through this story tonight, consider subscribing for more quiet journeys through Nintendo's worlds. Sweet dreams, and may your persistence be as legendary as Bowser's.